I would say that every retro anime fan in North America knows about Voltron, but today I'm reviewing an anime that not too many people know about, which is Golion, the anime that actually eventually became Golion after they gentrified it and edited out a lot of stuff. There's a lot of differences here, but that's not the point of the video. I'm not really going to be talking about Voltron. I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I don't have any problem with it, and I don't have any problem with people who currently enjoy it, but I wanted to focus on just the Japanese anime. But the thing that really surprised me is how different they were and how Golion just feels like it's not suitable. Why does this thing keep falling? It just seems like Golion would be one of the last choices that somebody would make for editing down an anime for network TV. They had to edit out a lot, like a lot of the deaths, because it's pretty violent. There's a lot of blood, there's scenes of dead bodies just laying around, there's slavery, there's references to sexual assault, Earth is in ruins. Like in the beginning of episode 1, we see that Earth is in ruins from a nuclear war, and all that stuff is just removed. There's other things too, but I don't want to be more specific and risk spoiling what Golion is just to tell you what Voltron isn't. Suffice to say that this is not a good choice to edit down for a kid's anime. So the basic premise of Golion is actually pretty straightforward. It's just good versus evil, but it's interesting how they tell it, because by the beginning of the story, evil has already won. The evil Galra Empire has already conquered everything in the galaxy, and you're either willingly subservient to them or you're enslaved by them. And there's a couple people on different planets that just haven't been enslaved yet, but for the most part, they conquered everything in the galaxy, all the planets. And our heroes are having to fight uphill and gain momentum, and it's just kind of fun to watch that. But at the same time, I'd be lying if I said I enjoyed every episode of Golion, because the first half of it was pretty rough. It's mostly episodic for the first half, and then the second half actually gets serious and it becomes far more linear by comparison. And the first half of it, I don't have a problem with episodic anime, but there's got to be something that just sticks and make me enjoy it. Maybe there's something that will snowball later on. Maybe there's some new exposition or new characters added, or we learn something about the history or the technology within Golion. And those episodes did exist within the first half, but there were a fair amount of episodes that just felt monotonous in the way that Daizabal and the Galra Empire would instigate problems with our heroes, and it felt like I've seen a lot of times where they pretend to be somebody else and use magic to infiltrate their base, or they just send over enemies just because it's Tuesday. And that part right there really didn't make a lot of sense either, because they control the entire galaxy, basically. They can get all their ships at once and surround the planet and literally just destroy it if they want to. Not that that sort of thing happens in the anime, but I'm saying they have the power to do that. But really the enemies felt very incompetent for most of the show, and a lot of the things they do just doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't, like, the only reason why I can imagine that these guys are even in power is just for their blatant disregard for any sort of human right, and it's almost so bad that it's funny in that regard. There's some sort of weapon towards the end of it. I don't want to say it, but it's supposed to be dramatic and like, oh, I can't believe they're doing that or whatever, but I was just laughing. Like, if you've seen it, you know. I wish I could tell you, but anyways, it's just funny, their disregard for life there, because they're just killing people just because they look at them the wrong way or whatever, and it doesn't have the impact that I think it's supposed to have. So regarding the rest of the story, it's like I said, I had a hard time with the first half of the anime. The first quarter felt like a 6 out of 10. The second quarter felt like a 5 out of 10. It made me feel like they could have done a lot more to make me interested in the characters. It's not that they didn't try, because they did detail certain characters very well, such as the strategist, the princess, the villains as well. They actually got a fair amount of detail there too, and I actually really like the fact that they did that for those characters, but I just wanted a little bit more for the male protagonists that we have, because you would just expect them to be some of the central characters. And we also had a fair bit of detail surrounding some of the one-off characters for the episodes, for the individual episodes, because there were some pretty good dramatic stories there, but there were a fair amount of them that I felt like were kind of mind-numbing. But the second half of it, the third quarter of it felt like a 6 out of 10 as it was getting better, but that fourth quarter, it was like an 8 out of 10 for me. In my opinion, the way that final quarter played out, it didn't rectify the issues that I had with the earlier segments, but it did make me feel satisfied and thankful that I actually stuck through with it, because a lot of things happened in that final quarter, a lot of things I wasn't expecting, and a lot of uh, I cared more about the characters in the final quarter. I'll just say that, because we just learned so much more about them, and there were elements to the story that I didn't think were important that would snowball and they would become relevant again, and I'm like, hey, I remember that happened. That was actually something important. That's great. But yet overall, it was a fun anime. Oh, I got to talk about the art and animation too. The art style for Golion here is really so unique, and it really falls into this wonderful era. A lot of people don't really think, a lot of people that aren't into mech anime, they don't really understand how unique they were. They just think everything's, oh, it's either like Mazinger Z or it's like Gundam. It's one or the other. It can't be both, or maybe Macross thrown in there. But as far as the visuals go, I really enjoyed this for the most part. It's not perfect. There are some problems here, but I really love the aesthetic, because it just feels like I could be wrong, but it just feels like it's the only metal mech anime. Like, you've got the villains, they're dark elves, they've got a witch with a black cat, they fly around spaceships with skulls in the front of them, and they fly around in these little coffins with skulls in the front of them. The insides of their buildings look organic. Everything about it is just so sci-fi horror / metal. One thing I love about Golion is its wide variety of action. There's hand-to-hand combat, shootouts, sword fights, space battles, and of course the mechs. But even within the mechs, there's a great deal of variety there too, because they'll start off their attack with the foot soldiers and the tanks and the fighter jets. And there's this one scene here I remember where the camera was on the ground watching the foot soldiers run away from the giant lion in the back, but then the monster comes out, starts smacking around the lions like they're nothing, and that requires them to form Golion. And one thing that really stood out for me with Golion, every time that Golion summons his power sword, or I forgot the name of it, and he finishes the enemy off, it's an original animation unique to that episode. Like, if there's a giant centipede flying through the air, he'll just fly straight into it and pierce all the way through it. And I thought that was just great, how there's something different in every episode and they're all finished off in different ways. One thing I wish they would have done better is how they implemented the elemental system, because they explained that each lion has a coordinating element, and it's great because in Golion mode, they actually combine the wind and the fire hands together and create a fire tornado, and that really opened my mind to a lot of possibilities of different elemental combinations. But I think that's the only thing they do, and they don't even do that right all the time, because sometimes fire comes out of the wrong lion's mouth. So overall, I had a lot of mixed feelings about Golion, but I hope that this review tempered you to the negatives and prepared you so that you can enjoy the positives even more. I give it a 7 out of 10. It is a solid recommendation for anyone who's a fan of retro super robot anime, and it is a must-watch for anyone who's a fan of Voltron, because you gotta see the differences. You gotta just do it for yourself and understand what's different. It's not gonna take away from your original experience with that, and that's not the point of this video, like I said, but I just want to raise awareness for the original. So one thing that makes me sad about all this is that there are so many Japanese shows that were taken and transformed into something else, and then what it became got a big following in another country, and that gets new things, while the old thing, they just never paid it back. Like, Voltron, a few years ago, it got a couple new cartoon series, and then it had, like, I think it got a video game to it as well. But what did the original get? Golion didn't get anything, not even a remaster, simply for the sake of preservation purposes, and that's sad to me. And that's one thing that, like, I really wish it would get a remaster at some point, and hell, I wish it would get a proper remake to it, like actual Japanese remake to the original Golion, because there's so much potential with this story that I would love to see more of the backstory. I would love it if they did the characters a little bit better, and I would love if they fixed the things with the action there. I think that would be like the perfect thing for them to do, and I hope with all the remakes of everything that they're doing now with anime that they'll eventually get around to doing something with Golion here, because that would be great. So anyways, if you decide to check out Golion because of this video, come back and let me know what you think. Thank you all for watching, and have a great Christmas if you celebrate.